You've been hard at work making your latest build, but then it hits you. You've got a lot of building to do. And if you're on Java, you can just download World Edit and that's that. But what about my Bedrock people? Well, I'm here for you people of Bedrock. Because you are not alone. You have commands. And you may not understand commands yet, but I'm here to help. I will teach you how to build with commands, and I'm not just talking about filling a rectangle. I'm talking about angles, spheres, and yeah, we'll touch on the rectangles too, don't worry. But I promise you people of Bedrock, I will make you a better builder. Alright, let's get into this now, and I'm going to put some timestamps on the screen for what we're going to be covering. We'll start with basic things like set, block, fill, and clone, and then we're going to use these to draw a cylinder and then a sphere, and then we're going to get into some more technical things, drawing curves and angles, and then make sure to stick around to the end because we're going to be using a little bit of math to draw some pretty cool shapes there. So let's jump right into it with the basic commands, and we're going to get right into it with the set block command. And the set block is a very powerful command, but it's also very basic. So what I'm just gonna do is set stone right of that block in front of me. And that's what it does. It sets a block. It's a really basic command, but it is very powerful. And we're gonna be using this in a lot of our more complex techniques later in the video. So make sure you remember it. And now just a step above set block, we're gonna look at the fill command. So to type out a fill command, it's pretty straightforward. You just do /fill followed by the coordinates of 0.1 and then 0.2, and then it will fill all the area in between with whatever block you put here. Pretty simple, but it's very powerful, and it can save you a lot of time if you're building very big but pretty simple shapes. And the command can take a few parameters. Like here, we're gonna use the keep parameter, and that will just keep any blocks that are not air, and it won't fill them with the block that you specify. And so you'll see here, it kept all the red wool, but it did fill all the air with the stone we wanted. And these parameters are also there on the set block command, though they are a little bit different. And so this command is also pretty simple like the set block, but it is a step above, and it's a teeny bit more complexity, but a lot more power to it. And for the final beginner command, I brought us over to a village, and we're gonna clone this house. I think it can be really helpful to set down physical markers like these red wool in this example, and it helps me really visualize it easier. And the formatting for the clone command is pretty similar to the fill, where you have a point A and then a point B, and then that third set of coordinates is gonna be where you are going to be cloning it. And so this is gonna go in the positive, positive, positive direction. And then it also has some more arguments such as filtered, mask, and replace, which pretty much do what they say. But just like that, when we run the command, we clone that little house right over to where we are. And it does save these wool. So if you wanna take those wool out before you clone it, you don't have to worry about that. And that's about it for the clone command. It's pretty simple, but also very powerful. And now that you've got a pretty good understanding of how these basics work, you'll be ready to breeze into these next techniques that I'm gonna show you. And we're gonna start by drawing a circle. And drawing a circle in a game made of cubes is a little bit difficult, so I brought us over to a super flat world where I've set up some commands that are gonna help us out a little bit. And I've set up this world so that we should be able to run through it pretty quickly. And so what that command block does is it just teleports me to this orange wool, and then this is the command that's gonna allow us to draw a circle. It's just executing at the closest player, which is gonna be me, and it's setting a block wool in front of us, 6 blocks. And this number right here is gonna be the radius of your circle. And so when I turn it on, and then you look at the right angle, and you spin in a circle, and then we zoom out, you see we've made a circle. And another way we can go about doing this is with an armor stand. And it's gonna be the same idea as that one, except for we're executing at the armor stand instead of me. And so I'll turn this command block on and you'll see what happens. And that very easily made us a perfect circle in Minecraft. And if we want to turn this from a circle into a cylinder, then we could either just clone this layer upwards a couple times, we could repeat the same commands just one layer higher, or we could use this command block that I've set up here. And it's the same idea, except for instead of set block, it's going to fill. And that's just gonna fill an 8 block tall wall all the way around us in the same place that the circle was. And again, it's a perfect circle and it was made really quickly. And making a cylinder was pretty easy, but now we're gonna move on to one that's a little bit tricky, but basically the same idea, and that's making a sphere. So I'm gonna press this button and it'll just teleport me up to that block right there. And the reason that I use command blocks to teleport me to these blocks isn't just so the video flows smoother, but it's also because you want to have a precise center point when you're making these circles and cylinders. When we teleport ourselves, we're put directly in the center of the block. But even if we're just 1 or 2 pixels over, that will affect the position that the blocks are faced relative to us, which will ultimately make an imperfect circle. And so to make the sphere, it's the same command as we had over there, whereas you're just going to be setting a block a couple blocks in front of where we're looking. And similar to the circle, the number right here is going to be the radius of your sphere. And so you'll see now wherever we look, it's going to place a wool block. Now making a sphere in this way works, but it is slow and it won't always turn out looking that great. So it'd be a good idea to take a similar approach as we did with the cylinder and use an entity to look around your sphere for you. And you'll see this is the result of that manual method I was talking about. It's rushed, but you can see it does work. And then this is the one I made with commands using an entity, and it is practically perfect. So I'd recommend putting in the extra minute just to do it with an entity. Now that we have this idea of using the set block to create shapes like the cylinder or the sphere, we can use it to help us create tricky angles that can give you a headache when trying to build by hand. And so I'm going to grab a boat for this example, because for this example we're going to have an armor stand at one point, and then we'll put the boat at the other point. And you could do this in a lot of different ways, but this is just the way I've set it up because it's pretty simple. And so the command that I'm going to be using will just take this armor stand and it will point it towards the boat and move it forward just a little bit. And so if we flip this lever, you very quickly see it just draws a shape to the boat, but you'll see we have that angle that might have been a little tricky to do by hand. And at this small scale, it might not be all that impressive, but think about the potential of this if you were using it to build a large angled wall. And now we're going to try and do some of these more extreme angles where we have an angle going upwards and then we also have a diagonal angle going upwards. And for these ones we have to take a slightly different approach where when you place the boat, it will place wool slightly above the boat and teleport towards it. And the reason that it's offset by a couple of blocks is so that the boat doesn't run into the wool that it's placing as it's moving. And there's other ways to get around it, but this was the simplest way. And then you'll see for these extreme angles where we have a diagonal and upwards, it's the exact same thing. And it works all the same, gets a perfect angle every time. So easy. And using the same principle that we did on that initial cylinder, where we're just filling instead of a set block, we can use this to make a wall at an angle. And when making these angled lines, it can be really useful to use commands, but you could do it by hand if you wanted, I suppose. But this next one is going to be something that would be really hard to calculate by hand, and that's going to be some curves. And so I've gone ahead and I've set up these 4 command blocks that do one simple algorithm to create some curves from this armor stand up to my player. All that these commands are going to do is teleport this boat a couple blocks in front of the armor stand, and then it's going to point the boat at the player. The boat will get teleported about 1/5 of a block towards the player, and then the armor stand will get teleported about 1/5 of a block towards the boat. This makes it so that the armor stand is always teleporting forward, but also slowly correcting so that it will be facing the player. And so I'll turn these command blocks on, and you'll see we get the wool. And now as soon as I place down this boat, it's going to start moving forward and slowly making an angle towards our player. And if we move out to the edge, it'll do this again. And then I'm going to try and bring it all around back, straight to the same block that we started at. And there you have it, a very irregular shape that would have been very hard to calculate and make it look smooth by hand, but the commands make it pretty easy. And this example isn't really the most practical for building, but it's a very easy way for me to show you what it can do. If you wanted a more practical build, you might just set it from one point to the other point and then give it an angle for it to follow, similar to how a Bezier curve kind of works. Now this is probably where I would say the practical uses for this approach meet its limit. It's very powerful and I use it in lots of tools when I'm building, but we can still take this to the next level, a level beyond practicality. And that's exactly what I've done in this world. And before I show you everything that I made, I think we can address the elephant in the room. This is a giant hourglass that I made, and it only took these 5 command blocks to create that shape that gives the custom hourglass curve. And I made it for the thumbnail of the video, but I'm not sure if it's gonna make the final cut, so you'll know when you watch the video. But disregarding all these weird dirt structures that I was experimenting with, the first one that I'm gonna get into is this 7 command block tower behind me that's gonna create a square out of stone, and then it's gonna slowly rotate it as we move up. And so all we should have to do is place 1 armor stand, and then when we flip this lever, it should just work. Oh man, oh wait, I forgot, we have to give it a scoreboard. So we just give it these 2 scoreboards, and then when we flip the lever, it goes around and it starts creating a square. And then it will do this 1 layer higher each time, but it rotates the square about that point, just 2 degrees each time. And usually in my videos, I tend to include either a map or a structure download that is related to the video. Since this one is a little more of a tutorial, I wasn't sure what to include, and so I left a link to this world download in the description of this video if you want to see all these examples that I'm about to show you. So if you're interested, go check out that download below. And while you're down there, don't forget to leave a like and hit the subscribe button, because I love commands and I make a video like this every single week, and you're not going to want to miss out on some of the things that I've got coming up. And while you guys just gotta watch a quick little time lapse, this one took about 2 minutes to generate, and I think it's a pretty cool effect that we get here. And a lot of these more complex builds that I'm gonna show you here use what is called nested iteration, and I do this through 2 scoreboard objectives. But basically how it will work is it will do one thing, and then when a condition is met, like here where the square is filled, it will change one aspect of that and then do it again. Like in this case where it will move up 1 block and then it will rotate about 2 degrees inward. And this next one is probably the most complex example I have here, but even at the most complex one, it's only about 10 command blocks, so it's not that hard. We're gonna turn it on, and you'll see what we get here. You're gonna see what happens is these 2 armor stands are drawing circles at the same point, but then they're going to be rotating where that point starts around where this boat is as they move upwards. And as this goes on for long enough, it's going to create this double helix shape, similar to how a DNA would look. And when you get done with it, you'll be left with a very sick shape. And if you tried to build this by hand without the help of commands, you would have a serious headache right now. And when I was messing around just running through the insides of these helixes, I thought this kind of seems like a spiral staircase. So I decided to whip up this stack of command blocks that would just make you a spiral staircase. And just like that, it will go away building a staircase. And this one does get a little messy. It creates a lot of blocks like this, but you can just use a command like this to get rid of all of them. And just like that, in a matter of seconds, we have a spiral staircase that was so easy to build. And this final stack of command blocks that I used to build this hourglass, where it will just create a circle of glass around the boat, and then every time it completes a circle, it will change the angle at which it creates that circle and move up just a little bit. And so you'll see, using command blocks to build these complex shapes can save you a lot of time and a couple headaches. And while some of them may not be the most practical and you won't use them in your everyday building, the fact that you know how to do them gives you a little more power and helps you dream just a little bit bigger. So as long as you learned something and you're just a little bit better at commands, I would consider this video a success. And I'll see you in the next one.